Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Mentor Time topic of the week. This week, we're covering the context of knowledge workers. Most people say to me, I'm a knowledge worker, Sue. What results do I really produce? So let's get started. I'll tell you all about it, and I'll show you how you can demonstrate those results. This work started almost 4 decades ago by Porter, who defined the bottom row of activities that are things that need to be produced at each phase for a product to come from conceptualization to actually producing it and then selling it. Later on, the several bars at the top were added as the enabling environment, things that need to be in place for a company to continue to produce goods and services. I started thinking about this when I was beginning to look at several decades ago, how and in what way we as knowledge workers demonstrate what we do. People would ask me, Sue, I don't have a writing sample, meaning I don't have a referee journal article that I can send for a job interview. What do I use as a writing sample? And that led me to identify the most closely related to helping knowledge workers understand where they fit in a value chain is to look at the project management life cycle. This typically, this is one of many different designs people have used. This typically includes these 5 phases. It's not linear though. I chose one that wasn't linear. It still shows some linearity. Things do not do not happen on a time frame, and there's overlap in these. But a knowledge worker product is more like what the intervention is producing, and that has different stages to it. So let's take a look at a more detailed diagram that someone put together. And I like this because it does have the overarching arrows around the middle 2 boxes. So you see the same initiation phase, then moving on to planning, execution, and closure. But what is also important is what they call monitoring and controlling. In healthcare, and certainly in public health, we call it monitoring and evaluation. That is an aspect that is ongoing, and thus I chose this view because very few people show these overarching arrows and a feedback loop. So let's now talk about the roles that come from this. I cleaned the diagram up and added my name for each role at each of the levels. So the first for initiation is really the conceptualizer. These are strategic planners, people who do business development, even people who do advocacy and community engagement. They have the big picture thinking. They know and get people moved along on readiness to change behaviors, change something in their community. The next phase is planning, and those are planners. And planners help take what the initiation folks, the conceptualizer folks have conceived of and help make it come alive. In fact, one mentee that I talked to recently mentioned when we were going over this, that she saw it as a way that at each level, the person was unpacking the level before and making it happen. I think that's a good thing to think about. Moving from planning to execution, these are the doers and implementers. So if you say you're running a project, most people are going to assume you're doing project management, project implementation. And this takes the bulk of the time, whether it's a 1-month project or a 5-year project. This is the place that the intervention that you've designed rolls out. And then finally, you have closure. And you'll notice for the closure, there's assessor documenters, but it's not just at the closure phase. It's also at the monitoring and evaluation or controlling phase. These are people who do monitoring, quality control, quality assurance, end of project evaluations, and the like. So here are the roles for each of these. I've mentioned these some of these as we've gone along. The conceptualizer phase are people who are strategic planners, business developers, advocates, community engagement. The planning phase includes people who develop the inputs to someone else's outputs. And this was brought home to me by a master trainer I worked with starting several decades ago, who said to me, as he was developing training systems for our internal company, my work is to get all the trainers as an input to what the program officers need to do in the field. Logisticians, people who need to make sure supply chains are in place for activities to be carried out. Performance improvement experts are also planners. The doer phase includes implementers, but they also include technical experts. These are the people we need for technical advising, technical expertise that go hand in hand with the implementers, so that when something's happening in the field, we know that we're giving the best technical advice possible. And finally, the assessor documenters are usually evaluators or researchers. Now, as we look at those role phases, you can see different kinds of job titles. These are some recent job titles I pulled out of some job announcements. So on the conceptualization phase, strategic planning officer. On the looking at engagement, coordinator for advocacy, or the coordinator for constituency and campaigns. All of these people are doing the large work to get a population ready to move on an intervention. The planners, again, planning is a discipline, but you'll see all different kinds of titles there. A senior logistician, a public health and biodefense planner, and then we see the trainers who are learning and development associates, data learning and data analysts. That combines a little bit of implementation in that person's job too. The implementers, as you'll notice in the top 3 bullets, all 3 of those titles look like they should be different. At least I would think a program manager might be different from a program coordinator or a program officer, but no, they aren't. They all asked for 5 years of experience. So that's why you can never go just by a job title alone. And you'll see at the bottom a couple examples of technical experts. Someone who needed environmental curriculum education background, specifically for an intervention. And the assessor documenters, again, a wide variety of what's needed. In the first one, it needed to be someone who knows impact evaluation, which is a subset of evaluation research. At the bottom, you'll see a researcher for healthcare reform, which is very different from the research assistant maybe at the College of Medicine. They could be working on a clinical trial, for example. So now let's get to how you use these to show what you've done. These are real examples from mentees and other colleagues I've worked with who've asked me for help strengthening how they show their results. And I want you to see that the red bolded are the types of verbs you can use to really show how you've moved progress along, not just responsible for, but co-led something. And then the italicized red shows you what results you have happening. So on the first one, under conceptualization, if we look at the 3rd bullet, we see collaboration with different stakeholders, but we also see developing 5 coalitions to meet local needs. Now, anybody who knows what it's like to work on developing one group of diverse stakeholders knows that's difficult. So 5 coalitions, that shows comprehensive results. In the second one under planner, we can see the second bullet talks about developing and conducting training. And this person did a good job with following my recommendations to always have not just the who, what, when, where, and why questions, but answer also including volume, frequency, duration, continuity, periodicity, how much, how often, over what period of time, to whom. So you see that there. But then you see resulting in improved services. This was a new intervention. There wasn't a lot that she could say about it at that point, except that they were having staff getting better ratings for the anonymous surveys, and they were seeing that clients were coming back more frequently. Under the doers, many times they can include project management achievements, such as overseeing and managing a budget of X size, a team or a staff of X number of people, or a variety of grants, or all of the above. But let's look at the bottom one that says provided technical expertise and support to more than 20 country offices. So right there, we know that this is a technical expert, but can you imagine a person who has 20 different clients all over the world who's providing expertise potentially in different languages, in this case she was, but also for different kinds of staff and client needs. And finally, under the assessor documenter, this middle bullet is someone who was a year out of grad school. She was in a fellowship. And what we were able to do is use the ArcGIS training that she had taught herself to work with this program to make maps, to create and present maps. She showed the distribution of different infectious diseases to more senior people in her office. And that helped them because she was then able to do 4 different logic models, which is a big deal, that will help them evaluate the impact of their program. So this, again, one person, 1 year out of school, and she was able to use this to demonstrate results. So that's everything on this week's topic of knowledge workers, where do I fit in the value chain? Please contact me if you want more information on this. If you have other ideas about tips you'd like to, topics you'd like me to cover. If you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, you should be. So go ahead and connect with me, and stay tuned for additional topics of the week as we get more shared for you. Thanks very much. Bye.